July.
Okay. We'll lighten the tap. Okay, Commissioner Court Workshop. Today's 21st day of January. It's about 11:12, 11:13, somewhere along in there. And the workshop is to discuss emergency medical service provider possibilities for unincorporated areas of Liberty County. And solutions to problems. And always, as the old warden used to say, don't bring a problem to me without having an answer to your problem. So that's what we have today, some answers to review and see what direction we want to go. We do have a provider currently, and we have opportunities to go in other directions, and we want to review those other directions. So I know the committee that comprised this group worked pretty hard. And Clint, who all was with you on the, why don't you come on up, if you don't mind. You don't have to wear your mask. Nobody's gonna cough on you. I promise I won't cough.
This working group was put together, several folks in the community, I think, approached you about several options, and you linked us all together. Primarily, it is Mike Cohen with Liberty County EMS on the asset side, and then you have Jared Oliver on the operational side, and Chris Tumlin on the operations side as well. We'll be taking you through what we have found as far as data to present to the court so that you can make a decision about what direction you'd like to take Liberty. We do have a current provider that is providing services for the unincorporated areas of Liberty County. Liberty County EMS is approached with an offer for the county to purchase assets. And then if the county would like to get into the EMS business as a department. So that's where we're at today.
Now, explain a little bit further on this for transparency purposes. The opportunity to purchase the outstanding assets of Liberty County EMS, since they were a nonprofit.
Yes, sir. According to nonprofit law, they have to give their assets to another nonprofit corporation or a like business that is nonprofit. The county government also fits that bill as in the public good, public necessity. So that's why Liberty County EMS has proposed this rather than giving it to someone else, since they are members of this community, they are taxpayers in this county. They did want to give Liberty County the first opportunity to pick up any of these assets if the county so chooses.
Okay. All right. All right. With that being said, Commissioner Wilson's with us. Commissioner Korbowski's here in the courtroom with me. Commissioner Arthur is zooming in, probably just by audio only, not by video. Bill Huggermuller, our county fire marshal, Kim Harris County. We also have Rod Nichols, who is the EMS director for Chambers County.
Yes, sir.
Who actually kind of got the ball rolling with me on the potential for even discussing this consideration. And of course, once we did that, then the ball gets rolling and we start looking at opportunities. So that being said, pretty much everybody knows who's here and what the players are going to be, at least the stakeholders, the people in the county. So the players here, at least we get give an opportunity to explain what the efforts are. So let's start from the top. Where are we currently? And even with a proposed asset acquisition, then we're going to look at a proposed budget possibly, because that's the bottom line for us. Assets are one thing. I mean, I don't know if I can get Dwayne to cough up a nickel.
This is a two-part proposal today
Yeah.
for numbers for you to look at.
Okay. All right. We'll take off wherever you'd like, and let's go from there.
All right. I do want you to ask questions as you get them. so you don't get lost in the questions. This is a high-level approach to what this proposal is. As far as the assets, those are hard numbers. The proposal as far as the operational costs of the department that the county would run, those are high numbers. If you indicate that a direction you may want to go into that, we'll loop in the purchasing department and the treasurer's department to get hard numbers on your personnel costs and the things that the county has to do. We did take a look at Chambers County's budget as well on some of the same principles of a department. Some of our numbers are the same. Some of our numbers are a little bit different. I do know that they pay a little bit more over in Chambers County. So that is one thing, but we can address that in another day. Basically, let's start with the assets. I've talked to you about Liberty County EMS and why they are proposing the asset sale. Mike Cohen, he is the Liberty County EMS director currently, and he will take you through his assets of Liberty County EMS and what they're proposing for the county to purchase that asset.
What kind of service do we currently have?
Currently, do you want to take that one? No? Okay.
I mean, so that we know what we're doing, apples for apples or whatever. I mean, what kind of services are we offering the citizens now?
Right now, Stephanie, correct me, and Bill, you may chime in on this too, Bill. We have 6 ALS ambulances.
I don't have the contract in front of me. I want to say it's anywhere from 4 to 6.
We have 2 advanced life support ambulances and 4 basic life ambulances and 1 chaser
That's correct.
supervisor. That's what we are currently providing the citizens of Liberty County right now. Liberty County EMS provided 4
At one time.
at one time,
four-
4 to 3
Yeah.
advanced
Three.
life support.
All of them were there.
All of ALS. What this proposal is for 6 advanced life support ambulances, 4 primary 24/7, 2 calls up with paramedics.
To add to that,
Yes, sir.
Dayton and Cleveland also have contracts with Allegiance, who is our current provider.
Correct.
And we can pull from their service, whatever their service established is for each city, should we have to do so. I mean, they've agreed to do that in our current month-to-month contract. But that's one of those deals that it happened and we got taken care of in a hurry. Now, let's see what we can do with this. And I will ask, Ron, can you hear me okay? Ron Nichols?
Yes, sir. I can hear you just fine. You hear me?
Yeah.
Here, that way I'll turn my video on too in case you need it.
Yeah, you and I talked about this from the get-go, several months back.
Yes, sir. And I've worked very closely with Mr. Bush throughout the process too. I'm working on their budget to try and figure out what solid numbers would be for Liberty County if they chose to make the decision that Chambers County made last year and go with a county-funded EMS service and run with an actual county government-operated EMS.
What, Reader's Digest version there, Ron, what prompted Chambers County to move into a county-supported EMS for the unincorporated area?
So what started initially the conversation is Chambers County was operated primarily just like Liberty County EMS was. We had 3 501c3 services that were providing services at different parts of the county. The 501c3 services were generally part-time, some full-time staff. And for us, the issue we were running into is with the amount of disasters we've had in the last 2 or 3 years, it started causing some issues with coverage, providing adequate services. You also have 3 different services that have 3 different sets of protocols, 3 different sets of medical directors, 3 different directives. So you have the potential to have different, care for different sides of the county. And then the biggest issue was since the county was already funding them, it just made more sense for the county to do a county operation that gives you a little bit more local government control, but at the same point, you can start providing a standard of care throughout the entire county and the entire unincorporated areas of Chambers County versus having multiple different entities involved.
And how long ago did y'all move into the county providing service?
So the decision was made in August of 2019 to make a Chambers County EMS and combine the two EMS services that we had. That I was hired effective October 1st, and we went into operations as Chambers County EMF March 31st of 2020. So within about 7 months, we were able to make it happen. Now, granted, that's not a realistic timeline because of COVID. It hurt us and helped us at the same time. So I'll just kind of put it that way. Realistically, once you consider licensing, Medicare licensing, state licensing, national licensing, that's generally a 6 to 12 month process. It just kind of depends.
All right, that good information. I just want to kind of get your take on it. I talked to Judge Sylvia about it prior to y'all going that direction. And it's one of those deals where common sense is so common, why doesn't everybody have it? You know, so it's one of those kind of deals where you have to weigh out your options. All right, Clint, let's run down through the assets, if you would.
I'm gonna bring up Mike to discuss the assets and say his assets, he knows what he has. Yes, come on up here and I'll give you this out. Approved bids. A county group consisting of Greg Arthur, Bruce Kowalski, Mike Cohen, myself, Fire Marshal Herbie Miller. Who else was there? I think that was it. They did a walkthrough of all Liberty County EMS assets to lay eyes on, see what was there, what looked in good condition, what just the basic of what was there that the county would be purchasing. So those folks can speak to that subject. All right, Mike, turn it over to you on assets.
All right. As y'all will see here, I've listed down the majority of all of the assets that we have. And we also have what we consider to be a current value. And then where it says new value, if you were to have to buy that, all that brand new, then that's what the new value is on all those numbers. And we also, I do have two of my board members here, Don Nealon and Dana Pittman. So we had a board meeting after, that group came to the office and took a look at all the ambulances and all of our assets and did a good walkthrough. And so we talked about whether we could throw the building in along with it. And we had a board meeting and the board agreed that, we're okay with that. Understand as a nonprofit organization, it's like Clint said, at the end of the day, whatever we sell either has to go to paying off debts or it has to go to a like organization. I mean, we can't put any of that in our back pockets,
Right.
So we are very passionate about Liberty County EMS becoming a county entity. Fact is, when we had to change the name not long after I first took over about 24 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought at that point in time that we were going to be able to do that. And through the years, we ended up, and then we decided not to do it. We were doing well financially.
Mm-hmm.
And, but we're very passionate about it because we have very high medical protocols, very advanced medical protocols.
Mm-hmm.
And we carry a lot of advanced equipment in our ambulances, a lot of drugs, narcotics, and we have paramedics on all of our ambulances. I mean, every once in a blue moon, we may have to put an intermediate on one of the ambulances if somebody's sick and we can't get somebody to fill in. But, we're very passionate about that. And that means that people that are in a distress, medical condition, they have a better chance at surviving and living versus not. And so, we have the equipment to support that. And that's why we're very passionate about this becoming a county entity. When it becomes a county entity, the credibility level goes up dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have any problems in getting any people to come to work here, and good people, good quality people. know the two young men back here very well. But Jared was one of our supervisors. But anyways, you can go down the list and you can see, in the ambulances, we show that we have, 8 ambulances. We actually have 2 others that we're having some mechanical problems with that are fixable, and they would also run quite well. We have the 2 pickups, and then the Yukon, that's for chase vehicles. Then we have a van ambulance and a wheelchair van, and the heart monitors. Those are the updated, quality Zoe heart monitors and the Life Pack, 12 physio controls. Those are older, but they're still in very good shape. And again, what you see going all the way down through here is everything that it takes, to start an ambulance service and go with it. So you look at, if y'all had to buy all of that new, you're looking at $2,724,700. What we did, I'm sorry,
$3,224,000.
sorry, $3,224,700. And if you look at what we say is the current value of that is the 1.37 million. We owe, we have debt, and our debt we figure is around about $500,000. I know what the exact number is, and we had to add some cushion on there because we're still having to pay rent, and still having to pay insurances, and so on and so forth. So $500,000 we feel would, and our board felt is the number that we needed to make sure we cleared everything out. Just based on, what the current value is, that's still a savings of $870,000.
I'm not an expert on EMS. Bill, you there?
Yes, sir.
You looked over the assets and stuff. What is your opinion?
I think the assets are well worth what he's quoting us. There's no way in the world we would be able to go out and purchase that for that kind of money.
Thank you.
But anyway, we're willing to, according to what I've been told, it's a pretty easy process to sign it all over to you.
Yeah.
We did have the SBA loan. We have $150,000 on the SBA loan. Our cash is down about 140. I'm sorry.
So
Our cash is down about 140,000. So we're going to have to, we'd have to work that out. I hear that's pretty easy to work out also.
Okay.
So that's a big thing. We owe the bank, about 90,000, 80,000 on a couple of ambulances, our newer ambulances, First Liberty Bank.
So basically, it's like, we write a check at 500,000.
Yeah.
You get all the assets.
Yeah.
Period. Instantly.
Except for the barbecue pit and the 2 barbecue trays.
I only had to talk to Leon about that.
All righty. But yeah, you get all the assets of Liberty County EMS.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
That's very, very appreciative.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Good.
Ready. All right, Clint.
Any other questions on assets, commissioners, or anyone?
I believe that later on there will be discussion just as far as the ambulances go.
Sure.
Age, mileage and such. Of course, you can remount those boxes, because I've talked to Mike about that plenty of times when it costs to remount a box.
About 85,000.
Yeah.
On a remount
Right.
and recertification
Yeah.
of the box itself.
Yes, I talked to the manufacturer again this morning, or the guy that does the remount is in Conroe. He also does a lot of remounts for Allegiance and a couple other ambulance services, so.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
As long as the box fits on the chassis, we're good to go here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next part is operational and what it would take for Liberty County to set up a department. Some of this is obviously fluid. but this is just a high-level precursor of what we could do. Who's putting together that is Jared Oliver and Chris Tomlin. And I will go on, come on, folks. This is supposed to be a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to ask you not to, I want you to listen to what they have to say as well. Don't just read everything. We had given out paperwork before presentation. All right, there you go.
Thank you guys for being with us this morning, and we just appreciate the opportunity for me and Jerry to come by and really propose what we feel is a solid strategy for if we do go down this route of Liberty County EMS becoming a county. And so I won't speak to too much what a county entity is. I think we've already covered that. Yes, sir.
Who do y'all represent?
We were former employees of
Okay.
Liberty County EMS.
Just tell them about yourself.
Yes.
Give them some
Yeah.
credentials.
Yeah.
So Jared specifically has got over 10 years of experience as an in-charge paramedic in various emergency medical service capacities. He started his career as a 911 paramedic for busy, aggressive suburban EMS in the outskirts of Houston. He's transitioned over the last 6 years to rural EMS service, specializing in Liberty County specifically. And over the last 2 years, he's served as the clinical supervisor for Liberty County. That's having a direct line with not only Mike Cohen, but then the director as well, who governs protocols. He has experience as a critical care flight paramedic on fixed wing medicine as well as in hospital medicine. He's also the lead instructor at the EMS program at Lee College, which partnered with Liberty County EMS to train up those students. He's got lots of experience with incident command systems through his role as the fire department training captain, as well as he's a law enforcement officer in Liberty County.
Chris Tillman, he's got 12 years of service in EMS. The last 5 have been in critical care flight paramedicine, currently works for PHI Medical Services in the Liberty County area as well. He's operated in various EMS environments, including fire-based EMS, municipality utilities, and worked at a level 1 trauma center as well as private ambulance services. His experience ranged from high-volume urban inner-city departments such as the DFW Metroplex to rural EMS departments in outlying counties such as Liberty County. Chris has also worked as interfacility transports, HSE Industrial Medical Services, and executive clinical director for one of the largest ambulance services in Texas. During his time, he oversaw the revision and implementation of the entire clinical protocol, updating their clinical care guidelines to align with current evidence-based medicine. Chris also holds various instructor licenses, including the National Association of EMT Coordinator for PHI South Texas Operations. He's also an adjunct faculty instructor for the Liberty County EMS program, Lee College EMS program as well. Chris also worked in Liberty County and surrounding areas as a flight paramedic for PHI.
PHI is still known as Petroleum Helicopters.
Yes, sir.
But just the air medical side of them.
There's 2 sides. There's a air side, and then they still do the transport side on all platforms. So what we're proposing with this organization, we'll try to do this on that first page. It's really a streamlined, decentralizing that command from the county judge and commissioners and advisory committee, straight down to an EMS chief, and lateral from that, we have an EMS medical director, and then straight underneath, we have assistant EMS chief who would be over clinical and operations, and underneath that, 3 shift captains over A, B, and C shift, and those will be they'll have the daily supervisor duties of however many trucks, based on which option we go with, that we have on shift across the county.
And those captains will be in the chase vehicle. They'll all be thoroughly vetted, highly experienced and qualified paramedics to provide that advanced level care either before, during, or after any of those emergencies. Dr. Bhushan Kukali, he's our proposed medical director. He currently works at the HCA facility in Cleveland. He's a board certified emergency physician, graduated medical school in 1992. He's worked for HCA Houston Healthcare in various emergency departments for several years. He was the medical director for Bel Air Fire Department for 11 years. In his tenure there, shortly after he took over, he increased their billable revenue by over 20%. He came in, he did a lot of education, worked with the billing company, changed the way they did all their patient care documentation, and then a few years, he increased their revenue by 20%. He highly embraces evidence-based medicine. We work very well with him together. He has a lot of great ideas. He wants to be involved. If this takes off, he wants to come out. He wants to respond to calls with the captain. He wants to get involved monthly doing training, teaching, and increasing the billing revenue as well as the clinical operations side.
So if we look at the different staffing options, we'll start with just option one, which is 6 ALS trucks staffed 24 hours a day. Now, an ALS truck, for the purposes of this, is going to be 1 paramedic and 1 EMT on the truck. So there'll be a paramedic on every truck for ALS. So that's 6 trucks staffed 24 hours a day, in unincorporated parts of the county. And then at least 1 ambulance stationed in Hardin, Plum Grove, Raywood, Tarkington, and Westlake. And additionally, we'll have the captain in a chase vehicle staffed 24 hours a day as well. The next page, you can look at proposed station locations for that first option. Like I said, Hardin, Westlake, Tarkington, Plum Grove, Raywood, and then Station 6, 321 VFD. This is obviously not set in stone. This is something, like Clinton said, very fluid, but that gives you an oversight of the county, and you can see how the coverage would look just based on station locations.
So three on one side of the river, 3 on the other side of the river.
Pretty much
Proposed, yes, sir. And so we developed this based on 2019, early 2020 call data and calls for service. Statistically, there's not a lot of calls for service east of the Ames area. So we feel that having the 1 ambulance in Hardin was sufficient. And then most of the calls are going to be west of the river, Plum Grove, Tarkington area, down south through Dayton to Westlake.
Okay.
And those are always going to be changed based on current proposed models.
So the six truck cost, when you look at option one, 18 EMTs. Now, if you look at the asterisk, all of these salaries are with the benefits included. So that is taking into account all of the benefits when you become a county employee. 6 LS trucks at 18 EMTs and 18 paramedics. We did see that based on the director from Chambers County also advised that price is a little bit low as far as salary goes. However, it is an increase from what they were currently making at Liberty County EMS. So we did increase that a couple more dollars per
And
hour.
you've got the 18 EMTs at 959,400, on which figures out 53,300 per person. So that's, and as far as a paramedic, 67,000 per person.
Yes, sir, with those benefits included. We have 3 captains, EMS chief, assistant EMS chief, medical director, and then we've got our billing revenue set at 35%. We wanted to have an ultra conservative projection on billing revenue. So we took 35% of what Liberty County EMS's billing revenue was throughout 2019. That way we could, worst case scenario, if we were only to recoup 35%, which we believe it can not only be exactly what it was, but even higher, with good colleague support and his help with documentation and billing. But that comes to $420,234. Our ESO licenses, these costs will be for every option, obviously. The ESO, that's our EHR, our charting software license. We have to pay for a license every year, but that gives us tons of data, not just how we document our calls, but how we track everything we could ever want to track clinically and operationally can be done through ESO.
Quick question. The 18 EMTs, 18 paramedics, 3 captains, EMS chief, assistant chief. Those will all fall under the umbrella of Liberty County with benefits, retirement and such.
Yes, sir.
Is this 53,000 each? Does that include the benefits? I don't think it does.
Yes, sir. We took what that base salary was, and when it advised us to add 30% to that to account for benefits, and so we've done that.
And this doesn't withhold, just building on that. So for instance, the EMS, the assistant chief, hypothetically, if that was my position, some people might not be taking the county insurance, so that would obviously decrease. So we'd have some variabilities on that salary.
We have that.
Yes, sir.
We have that all the time, in different departments. Does mama take the insurance, your dad take the insurance?
Yes.
And how many kids you got? That's always our weighted subject when we look at the budget.
Yes. And I want to build on what Mr. Thomas said about the ESO license. It's our charting software, but the amount of valuable data we can pull. If you as a county judge say, hey, every Monday morning when I come to work, I want to know how many calls were in each zone of the county for the last week. We can have that generated on your desk in a matter of 30 seconds.
Okay.
To whereas some other outside services, you have to go through their corporate management, request that, where at us, it's a push of a button. So we have that flexibility. We can see how many heart attacks, how many strokes, how long it took us to give an aspirin to a stroke patient. We can break those down very, very minutely to tailor our patient care for the citizens of the county.
Well, there's no doubt homegrown tomatoes are a lot better than store.
Absolutely, exactly. Yes.
And those will be all the metrics that we measure our success when we report to you guys or the constituents of the county to say, how are we doing as an EMS service? Well, we've got this data, all these data points that we could show hard numbers to back up what we're doing. So when it comes time to say, hey, we need to add another ambulance, population's gotten even higher, let's add another one, what does the data show? And then we can easily look at that and we don't have to kind of speculate. There's some hard data to show.
So we can break down calls by time of day, time of, time of the week, day of the week, time of the day, hours, et cetera. So,
our operative IQ license, that's at $8,000. That's our inventory and narcotics tracking software. That streamlines our logistical process and saves up tons of money, minimizes waste. That's what's going to keep our supply costs down. So we don't have expiring medications, expiring supplies that eventually just become waste and cost us money. That 8,000 is an initial startup. It only ends up being 4,000 a year after that. So that is a higher number for initial startup than it would be every single year. Fuel from the 186 and supplies at 72,000. That's for 6 trucks. So with staff salaries, operational costs minus our billing revenue, 6 trucks comes in at 2.4, roughly $1 million for 6 ambulances.
Mike, quick question for you. The medical supplies that you have, they have expiration date, correct?
Yeah, we had very few that have expiration dates that have expired, just expired, very few of those. The next expirations will be October. And then after that, it'll be in 2022 in February. That's what most of them were.
Okay.
Some were in August, but not a whole lot. We just got through doing inventories on August.
Yeah, I figured you did. Yeah, that's why I had the question. Okay.
So option 2, and this is on a side note, this is what Chris and I believe would be best suited for the county at this point, just based on being boots on the ground and running calls in this county for several years and knowing the current call volume. This is 4 ALS or 4 paramedic ambulances staffed 24 hours a day as dedicated ambulances throughout the unincorporated parts of the county, minus Cleveland, Dayton, and Liberty, of course. We have at least 1 ambulance station in Hardin, Plum Grove, Tarkington, and either Westlake or the 321 fire area. Additionally, we'll have the captain on shift, and then if we needed to, we could have the peak demand truck. Now, I want to build on this. We have 4 24-hour ambulances and the captain. We have 2 critical care paramedics that are the administrators. If we get down to where we need another ambulance, the assistant chief and the captain can pull up a 5th ambulance at no additional payroll cost. And then that leaves the chief to move down into that supervisor rover chase vehicle role. So you can additionally have 5 ambulances and a supervisor for the same amount with no additional payroll costs.
Another question.
Sir.
On personnel. When you're listing 18 and 18, so I'm looking at that. And it, what about vacations, sick leave, any kind of thing like that, where you'd have to, would 18 be enough? In other words, 18.
We would obviously open up to have part-time employees that we would rely on heavily, as every service does. So I know Liberty County EMS, we had a very large part-time pool, and they were very eager to pick up shifts whenever we needed to fill shifts. The 4-truck option, it knocks it down to 12 EMTs and 12 paramedics, maintain the 3 captains, the assistant chief and the EMS chief, as well as the medical director, with the same conservative 35% billing revenue. And this is the same as it was in option 1 with the benefits included in the salary. So the same operating costs on the back. The fuel goes down to $124,000 on estimate, and supplies are $48,000. Now we want to build on the fuel cost and fuel usage. As a 911 service, we're going to focus on the 911 emergency response in the county. We're not going to want to take these non-emergency transfers from Cleveland Hospital to Katy or Sugar Land or Galveston. We're going to focus on the 911 response. So our ambulances are going to go to the closest appropriate facility, which is actually governed by the health code. If they can go to the HCA facility in Cleveland, that's where they're going to go. We're not going to take them to Katy because that's where their foot doctor is, unless they have to go there. So our ambulances will be traveling a shorter distance. They'll be back in service faster, which maintains the term high speed, low drag, if you will, of efficiency for EMS services. Okay. So overall cost for option 2, staff salaries is 1.9, operational cost with the conservative revenue, looking at 1.6 million.
So you're looking at $2,000, give or take, being $800,000 between 2 trucks.
Yes, sir.
The difference in the 4 versus 6.
Right.
And what were we running?
What were we running? We
2.
got, was it 3?
3 at the max, wasn't it?
We were running 3 and then we went down to 2.
Okay.
At one time, we were 4 with 2 on-call ambulances, then down to 3
With our,
with 1 on-call ambulance. And
with our anticipated growth, will 4 units be enough, Bill?
No, sir, it won't be. We're gonna have to stick to that 6 with actually a backup in the a major incident. So we need to focus on 6 ALS units.
And I'll tell you, to attest to the current operations, with 6 ambulances on the street in the county, it's quite common that there's some ambulances that only do 1 or 2 calls in a 48-hour period. Sure. That's where we look at the efficiency of cost. Even with this option 2, we have 5 trucks readily available, and then we can go to peak demand if we needed to.
So option 3, self-explanatory for the most part, 3 ALS trucks, staffed 24 hours a day, and as well as having the option for the ALS peak demand truck, staffed 12 hours a day. And we'll look at the data points to see, what is our busiest time frame. Currently, we looked at our data points, and between noon and 5 was our busiest times throughout the day on average. So we staffed that thing about 11 a to 11 p.m. For 12 hours, and that would kind of hit both into that 5 p.m. peak. That could be a 7 days a week thing, that could be a weekend truck, or whatever the data shows us, and we can move fluidly through that based on ESO's capabilities. So with that, we have 9 EMTs, 9 paramedics, captains, EMS chief, assistant chief, director, all those still the same. ESO license and off-IQ license the same. Fuel goes down to 93,000, supplies goes down to 36. So with staff salaries, operation costs, and billing revenue, we had 1.2 million for the 3 trucks. And the same thing as before, with those 3 trucks, we could also have the captain and assistant chief hop on to create a 4th truck, as well as the chief come down to make a squad as a chase vehicle. So essentially for the cost of those, we could get 4 ambulances plus a squad. So based on the numbers and the notes we had taken, average yearly billing revenue at 1.4780. So that's where we capped 35% of that became the 420,000. This is expected, like we said, to increase approximately 20% with EHR charting practices, with appropriate EHR charting practices through Dr. Tucali's help. And like we attested to earlier, he's been able to do that through his time at Bel Air Fire. So we've got 3 options on the next page. There they are lined out. Option 1 is the 6 truck, option 2 is the 4 truck, and option 3 is the 3 truck.
Okay.
We have a timeline, proposed kind of tentative timeline set up for what this would look like if we were to start this process and build this department. If you guys would like to hear the timeline as well.
Give me just 1 second. Ron, are you still listening?
Yes, sir, I'm still here.
What are you currently running in Chambers County, just on the unincorporated area?
For the unincorporated area of James County, we're currently running 3 ambulances on a daily basis. We have, the way we have it set up is we have 2 full-time staffed MICU units. We have 2 supervisors that are on duty, 1 on each side of the river, that make up the 3rd unit if needed, and I have an on-call staff to pull up a 4th truck. So we have 3, and then usually with our part-timers and that, we usually have 3 trucks every day and 2 supervisors. Our call volume is about 60% of what y'all run on the unincorporated areas of Liberty County, so it's a little bit less. So we don't need realistically, without having all the numbers in front of me and digesting the data, I think at a minimum, you're going to need the 4 ambulances with access to a 5th or 6th. If you don't even start with 5, would probably be your best bet, just because, and like I said, if I had access to the data, I could run those numbers for you a little bit better, Judge, to figure out what your utilization man hours and stuff like that are. I can help you figure out stuff out, but that's the big key, is the utilization man hours. You don't want so much downtime where they're not doing anything, but you don't want to where they have 18 calls in a shift and they have no time to rest either, because that poses a whole nother safety issue. So that's where I'd have to digest those numbers to be able to give you a better idea and estimate of how many trucks you're probably going to need and help you with that process.
Okay. What's the current population of Chambers County, based on your assumption?
Based on the assumption of the new census, we're going to be about 46,000, and most of our population, as you know, is on the west side of the county, Beach City, Cove, Trinity Bay, and Mount Bellevue area. And one of the advantages we have is Mount Bellevue EMS, and Mount Bellevue EMS, which is the most highly populated area of the county. They operate with 2 trucks and 2 squads every single day. So that's where they're at with their service. So technically right now, if you count Mount Bellevue, what we have in Chambers County, what we have in Winnie, for our entire county, we have a total of, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we've got Every day we have 7 ambulances and 4 squads on duty every single day in Chambers County throughout the county.
Ron, do you mutual aid out of Mont Bellevue quite often, or do you guys kind of just hand in hand it?
It's kind of hand in hand, but it's not. They mutual aid us every now and then, and honestly, it just kind of depends on the call volume. With the construction we've had at 3180, all that stuff comes into play. I think we've only mutual aided Mount Bellevue 4 times this year. Last year from when we went in service, and most of those situations were because it just so happened that we had 2 or 3 ambulances that were on a large wreck, and we didn't have another ambulance available. Or what tends to happen too is we have all 3 of our ambulances are transporting to whatever hospital they're at, and we don't have an ambulance currently in the county because of call volume. So we don't mutual aid them very much, and they don't mutual aid us very much either. Same thing. We all pretty much cover our own territories.
And it covers back to what I was getting at before. We used to mutual aid Mont Bellevue quite often, Montgomery County, things of that nature. So, you know, with the 6 number we need to focus on, that I think we need to focus on, that's not out of line.
Well, you know, Bill, based on what I think our population will be once they get through counting the numbers up, will be in excess of 100,000 with the population growth, even in the Colony Ridge area, going up even higher than that in the next 5 years. I think 6 is what you need to look at, starting out. Don't go low.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
too.
Don't go low.
There's no, I mean, we're charged with spending the taxpayers' money wisely. That doesn't mean going out and getting the bargain basement price to give our taxpayers. So it is,
Absolutely. And even if y'all wanted to split the difference down the middle and do 5 24-hour trucks with a 6 as a peak truck in the highest call volume time, and we can always reassess, because like Mr. Nichols said, you know, you don't want to have crews laying around getting paid for 48 hours to run 1 or 2 calls. And I think currently, I can speak for myself, that's happening in this current system.
I get what you're saying there, Jared. I really do. And we could look at, you know, starting with 5 and then adding that 6th one as population grows. I mean, we're going to get probably to 10 before, you know, we have a comfort factor.
Yes, sir.
And Bill, and you know, one of the things, what we did in Chambers County is we did the same thing y'all are talking about. So when we started our original budget, we budgeted additional funds for part-timers to cover the 3rd truck, or to cover the 4th truck, basically. And because of COVID-19, everybody has to deal with COVID-19. So especially with COVID-19, a lot of the part-time staff for the last year, because of the peaks in COVID, the services are restricting part-time staff. So basically, we just converted that part-time money that we had budgeted for, and we took that money and transitioned it over into FTE slots to where we had that 3rd staff truck with full-time employees. So that's another option you have too, as far as budgeting wise, where if you do it that way and you do your budget correctly, you know, if you need to transition those part-time slots later on down the road into full-time slots, you already kind of have most of that money pre-budgeted and then within the budget. And that kind of helps you that way too, where you're not trying to ask for another 800,000 at the next year.
That's a great idea.
Ron, I do have a copy of your budget here. I have one quick question. Total operating expenses about 2.7 million, almost 2.8. When you take into consideration billing, what does that offset that to be? Is there a bottom line number that I can anticipate?
Yeah, so we're running 3 ambulances. This doesn't include our revenue. With our revenue from this year, our expected operating expenses are right around 2.2.
Okay.
And we're collecting right around 40% right now. Now, taking into consideration that revenue is down for everybody across the country because of COVID-19, because we're not transporting as much as we used to, especially with the recommendations for patients to stay at home and things of that nature instead of filling up the hospitals. But I think our revenue was down about 25% what was expected, but we still collected what we anticipated, if that makes sense.
It does.
So, and a lot of that's done on billing practices, which billing company you hire, how the crews are documenting the calls. I could go into a whole long speech on how the revenue can be adjusted, just all dependent on documentation alone, and how you choose to do your billing revenue and which billing company you choose to use. All that stuff can be the biggest thing to look at on your billing revenue is not necessarily the percentage. It's what am I collecting per transport. So right now we're collecting about $560 per transport, which is about $150 above the national average.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, I think there was talk that reimbursement for county-based services vary. different than for a private service.
Yes, another thing you take into consideration, that we haven't even included that in the revenue because it'll be the first year, is you have the uncompensated care program through the state of Texas, which helps reimburse you some of the uncompensated care for the non-insured that you're transporting. As a county entity, you have access to that reimbursement, and that where Liberty County would not. And we just got done running those numbers because it's all due by March. And if we get back anticipated, that's another $470,000 we'll back from the state in September at the end of the year, from just based on the first 9 months we were in service. So you also open yourself up to additional grants. You open yourself up to additional federal grants and state grants that aren't accessible to local EMS. We just applied for an education grant, which is only for rural EMS services within the state of Texas. That could be an additional $200,000 in revenue that we're going to get from that one. We also just got an AFG grant to buy additional PPE and some decon units for our trucks. We bought APV 500 units through a grant for all of our trucks. Those are all grants that we were used to pay for things where we didn't have to spend the money. Those were additional grant opportunities that are there as being a governmental entity that you don't have as a private EMS organization.
Ron,
We love grants.
when your organization started, or when you kind of took over, did y'all have an opportunity to have ambulances there that y'all purchased, or?
So we actually were in a little bit different shape than y'all are. So Chambers County, Trinity Bay EMS and Anahuac EMS did have their own units. However, they did not have enough for us to provide the staffing like we wanted. So we actually had to purchase 2 brand new units up front. And because of the way for us, it's a little bit different. We had to transition as Chambers County EMS from Anahuac and Liberty with Liberty County EMS. If they've already surrendered their license, it will make your transition much easier than it was for ours. As Chambers County EMS, to get a license, and to kind of, without going into the weeds, but your license is attached to that VIN number. So, for example, if Anahuac EMS's VIN number 123 was attached to their Medic 11, I can't apply for a license with that VIN number. I have to actually own and show the registration and show that we have the title for that vehicle. So it made it a little bit more difficult for us because we had to purchase ambulances to get the initial license, to get everything switched over and add those in later. It'll be a little bit easier for you because if you buy those assets from Liberty County, you can automatically add those licenses in and get that and use that process without having to spend the additional money on funding other ambulances and supplies and things of that nature.
So if we decide to do this, we're a step ahead.
Yes, sir. You're a very, very big step ahead because of all the medical supplies, the medical equipment, I can give you last year's budget. We spent an additional $870,000 in capital expenditures last year to start Chambers County EMS outside of salaries and everything else, which is something that y'all, we had to buy monitors, we had to buy vents, we had to buy additional Lucas machines, we had to buy power loads for all the back of the trucks. Those are all things that we had to purchase on top of taking over for the EMS organization to get us ready to go into service. So if you to get the assets, and I don't have the asset list in front of me, but from talking to Mike Cohen in the past, I understand what kind of assets they have. The assets that you're going to have between cardiac monitors and all that is a huge step ahead that you wouldn't have later on down the road.
Thank you.
Leon, you got a question?
Yeah, Ron, is that licensing annually?
So for the state, you have to you renew your license every 2 years. Your Medicare and Medicaid licensing is basically re-credentialed on an annual basis. Your DEA license is every 4 years. It all depends on which license you're going to apply, but the state license is renewable every 2 years for the EMS service.
Thank you.
One more question, Ron. Y'all are funded, through the county, yeah. Do you have like a county ESD that funds you? Or is it the county specifically just out of the general fund?
For Chambers County, we have the health services tax that was applied for back in 2001. It was designed for smaller counties to help provide revenue for fire, EMS, public health departments, and health services. So our county actually collects an extra 1/2 cent sales tax on all the sales tax throughout the county. And that's where the revenue comes from out of our 091 fund to fund our EMS fund. We fund our volunteer fire departments. Our entire public health department is all funded off of that 1/2 cent sales tax.
That's a 1/2 cent sales tax, not ad valorem tax, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How much y'all already got out of sales tax, everybody around here, Glenn?
I've asked you out.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Just in my little district.
So before we go to the startup timeline, if you want to hear that, I guess one of the main reasons that we're proposing to drive this county-based service home is, like you said, manage the best home ground in your backyard. And we feel that'd be the best way to do it. These are our citizens. These are our folks working for the citizens. I know I plan on retiring in this county. I live here. I want to stay the rest of my life.
So I'm gonna be here too.
Yes, exactly. So that'd be a huge benefit. And our goal as being critical care paramedics currently still practicing is, we have to look at the finances. It's very important as well with your job, but also get the best bang for our buck for the citizens. We want them to say, okay, Liberty County, or whatever service is coming from Liberty County, hey, my grandma's in great hands. They're gonna have the best equipment, the best response time with the best employees. And that's what our goal is high efficiency and high acuity patient care.
So we looked at staffing that command structure. Everyone involved in that command structure is tasked with providing quality patient care. There's not a single person on that command staff that could not provide patient care to somebody. And that was the thing, just having as many useful personnel as possible in that command staff. Us, like I said, still practicing on our own, not being so disconnected from the fields where we lose touch with not only evidence-based medicine, but the needs of our medics, the needs of their families, the needs of the county, and still being down there and having a seat at that table with them, kind of come alongside them and do this the right way so we don't become, unfortunately, some corporation that, you call that is not local. And we just don't have a connection to the county. So
Where everybody's a name with a face, not just a number. This is employee 12. No, this is Mr. Brown.
I mean, well, we love having y'all here, even with, Allegiance, because we're on the pig trails on it.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, there's nothing worse than somebody telling me, back to, Eastgate, well, turn where Doc Staten used to live. Well, y'all know where he used to live.
Yes.
That's just real simple, but anybody else would not have a clue. The, bottom line, real quick, option 1, option 2, option 3. And I'm looking at, what Ron's total operating expenses are with 3 ambulances, correct? Right, Ron?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're looking at around 2.2 million, that's with everything with building revenue and such?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you have option 1, option 2, and option 3 for Liberty County. There's no doubt in my mind that y'all are gonna give way better service than what we're getting now. Because Mike gave us way better service than we're getting now. But when COVID came along, it cut everything. I mean, people were going like, I'll drive myself to the side of the highway, first and take care of my business. And it's unfortunate what transpired, but it happens. If we're gonna do this and realistically look at the numbers, I'm gonna look at the bottom line. I mean, that's what I gotta do. That's what Commissioner Karbowski, Commissioner Hartford, Commissioner Wilson's gonna be doing the same thing. And I don't see our newest commissioner on here, but anyway, we'll get in touch with them about all this. The bottom line is what we have to look at to budget for. And when do we get the budget ramped up to expedite this? So run down the summary, if you would, one more time on option 1, option 2, option 3. Provided we get these assets from Liberty County EMS, that's a debt we'll just, we'll assess it. Okay.
Yes, sir. So option 1, 6 trucks at those strategic points throughout the county with the captain on a chase vehicle. Option 2 is the 4 trucks with the captain on the chase vehicle with the opportunity to have a peak demand ambulance for 12 hours a day. And like I said, we can figure out what those days would be, if not 7. And then option 3 is 3 ambulances with the captain on a chase with the possibility of a 12-hour peak demand truck. All of these trucks, every single one of these trucks will have a paramedic, and we will not compromise on that. There will be, and there's been talk of having BLS trucks, and I believe, me and Jared both believe this firmly, every citizen in this county deserves access to the same EMS service, no matter when they call 911 throughout the day. It should not be a roll of the dice on whether you get 2 EMTs, whether you get a paramedic and an EMT.
Okay.
So there will all be paramedic staff trucks.
Okay. So option 1, what's the number on it again?
2.4 million.
6 trucks with a supervisor.
2.4 million. That's what the county would be expected to at least furnish revenue to cover.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay, I don't have that paperwork in front of me, but option one is 2.4 mil for how many ambulances?
6.
Okay, are they all ALS?
Everyone will have a paramedic on it. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, looking at the way these figures are from option 1, 2, and 3, it's evenly spaced at $400,000 per truck. Basically is what it's gonna be. So I mean, even if we decided to throw an option 4 in there and just 5 ambulances to start up with, we're looking at the 2.48 million of $2 million.
Exactly. And there's a safety net, wrote a safety net in there with the ability to upstaff that 6th truck. And if we're doing that all the time, then we need to start looking at, okay, maybe we do need to go move to the 6 truck option. But it's not something we have to get to 6 and then all of a sudden we realize we don't need it. Like you said, Mr. Karbowski, you can do the 5, and then we have that safety net for when those instances happen with the high call volume. That can kind of be our precursor to say, okay, we need to look at these 6 trucks. And it's a more secure option.
What I really like about this whole package deal is when I look at the inventory, I'm looking at 8 ambulances. Well, we're only looking at putting 6 of them on the road, or 5 or 3 or whatever. It still gives us the opportunity to take these older ambulances, have them refitted and recertified. So we always have a rotation of newer ambulances and we're never looking at breakdowns or shutdowns because of older equipment. It gives us a little breathing room.
We didn't ever get into our fleet maintenance ideas, but we can look at that later. And that would be the option to always have these spares. So we rotate these things out to get scheduled PM and maintenance done on a rotation to where nothing's neglected, everything's taken care of on schedule. And having those 2 extras, like Mr. Roski said, is part of the plan for sure.
So option 1 was 2.4 million. What was option 2?
1.6.
And how many ambulances?
4 ambulances with the supervisor and the chase truck.
Greg, can you kick some arrow back here, buddy? Not to stop coughing.
Option 3?
That is 1.2 million, and that is 3 ALS trucks with a paramedic chase captain.
I'll say your revenue is gonna be for
Leon,
Yeah,
would you like us to fax you a copy of this inventory or do you have a copy of it to look over?
I'd like a copy of it. We get Jay's office to fax it over to.
Here, yes, sir. Saying your revenue will be for.
That's a conservative estimate of our bill.
Just. 100,000, little over 100,000.
100,000 a month.
Yeah, that was it. It just kept dropping and dropping.
Right.
So your revenue.
Yeah, and we wanted to kind of shoot for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, maybe explain.
35. I think I missed it. 35%. So which is that rough 100,000 a month. Right.
Give me another copy.
So it's 35% of.
Leon, she's emailing it to you.
You just want the equipment or you want the whole proposal? Well, this is the whole proposal that the tables out. I have to scan it as well.
Let me see where he's at.
Well, I don't know if he wants it or not.
He's asking. That's
Miss Lee?
This is just the,
Hey, Miss Lee?
uh-huh.
I've got to step away from the computer for a second.
Okay.
Should ask him if he wanted to hold down on it.
I could email it to him, that's crossing the street.
Oh, we can email it to him here, but we just have to download it and send it over.
So,
Jay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, Greg?
Yeah,
I would like copies of that. I would like copies of the proposal and the inventory stuff also.
I will.
now it's on.
We'll be there in 2 seconds.
You're gonna do it, Lee? Okay, thank you.
So really, the range would be something like, the net cost to the county would be anywhere from $1.2 million to 2.4. With the, I'm just using option A. Sure.
So the option 2, the Ford truck option with the slide, when him and I played with numbers and broke it down, got down in the weeds, and we took what I said on Dr. Kukali, and we looked at what he did with Bel Air and took their projected revenue. We were running 4 ambulances and a supervisor vehicle. We got it down just shy of $900,000.
Jay,
yeah.
I'm back.
All right, we feel it can be done. We wanted to.
Leon, Mr. Chambers is
We have safety.
emailing y'all the entire package over to you.
That's it, there's a problem.
All right, thank you.
Exactly.
Or, even him with the pandemic, he was doing 100,000.
Because there's, like we said,
Until that most recent.
Well, I mean, when we stopped making calls and it started dropping, but where we were at on the 100.
One of the things we wanted to do after going through this is, look at Mike's experience and take the lessons learned from going through this pandemic from a university standpoint. All over again. What else is on my head? That's the chance to kind of recoup more, or find reimbursement in other places through grants.
there's a lot of things you can go for. I mean, for instance, if you have a let's a paramedic, he's on ambulance, on a call. I'm not an ambulance, it's a critical care paramedic. That's an automatic. So there's things that people don't always go for. We can always go through and make sure we get that thing for our buck.
Yeah.
That's a whole other monster.
Judge, did you want us to roll through a timeline as far as what it would take for us to get this rolled out?
Yeah, let's take a break just for a minute till Leon and Greg get their copies.
Okay.
If they have any other questions.
Ted, you sure have been quiet out there.
Practices as well, kind of answer for everybody else who did here.
Ma'am?
I've been following it all along.
School with that 35% extreme or ultra conservative number, and what really drives that, where Lee County EMS was, bring Greg and Leon up to speed on billing, what that means to the bottom line. Not even including the grant, so you didn't talk about grant.
No, I knew nothing about that grant.
Well,
I've heard of grants before.
Ron was,
It's
He's already looked at the whole page of grants we qualified.
just in the first 5 minutes.
me and the county.
but we didn't want to put that in here. Obviously, we just, get those grants on bank on that.
Oh, we can, it's a first come, first served thing on grants. Can't do it on way, another case, get them up close to the shed, that's an honor.
Can't do the sales tax.
Are they on?
Maybe we can take a break, like you said. If you
Yeah,
want.
take a break till he tells you to go again.
Okay.
Oh, we don't do sales tax.
No.
Yes, take a break, guys.
I don't know if there's any day left in the. No, we're gonna have a problem with the.
Those are different areas of the county park, not just, you know.
What, lighting
You have somebody in the county. For the county.
No, we won't.
Okay.
Or even as the board says. Who is it first?
No, we won't.
Figure they were telling.
Oh, I knew
Was that the same time? They were. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Judge
Judge, I got a tic tac, would that help?
I only got some peppermints from DD.
Chew one up.
Woo. No, when I get hot, Patty, if that coffee comes on, I would get hot while it goes. Not from talking to everybody, just temperature wise.
That was getting stuff in.
Yeah.
We are still alive.
That's okay.
Okay.
Not discussing business, we're discussing.
I sent it to all of you guys, so.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers.
Leon
Yes, ma'am.
and Greg, you should have it. I also copied it to Commissioner Whitmire, Judge Knight, and Commissioner Karabowski, so you guys all have it. And the information you're looking for is, I think, the 24th out of 25 pages on the option.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Scanner.
Judge Ron does have this proposal. He's got the documents as well.
Ron, you still there with us?
He's at Mercy's. He's at Mercy's. I think it's big company. Yes. Real research. Yeah. No. It is. It's subject unlike that's not.
Here. For two more ambulances, and there's also $400,000 here.
Hey, Judge, this is Ron Nichols. Just letting you know, I'm on another call too, so if y'all need something, just holler at me. I got you in the background.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a question for you whenever we get back into, looking at the paperwork here.
No problem. I'm just trying to get these vaccinations planned for this weekend. So, I don't have just the EMS hat. I have the EMS and the planning section chief for the EOC and the 5 other hats I wear too. So.
I got you. I know the feeling, believe it. I know it's big. Ron, since you're there, quick question. You had a chance to review the that we have before us as far as option 1, 2, and 3. And do you have any comments? You had the opportunity.
I think the big thing, and I can help your team with that, is figuring out what your utilization man hours are going to be to figure out what the best option on trucks is going to be. You want to shoot higher than you anticipate and anticipate for that growth, but at the same point, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot where you're staffing a bunch of ambulances that aren't being utilized. And there's lots of different options as far as funding and budgets to make that work. I know I went through about 7 of them in Chambers County in the first 3 months when I took over to figure out what the best option was. As far as making sure you have enough staff. And One thing that I think is missing off of that is the additional budget for the additional overtime for vacations and holidays. And I don't see a budget for any part-time staff. So that's something that's going to have to be added into the budget, into that cost estimate as well. Because you can't just rely on full-time staff with vacations. Once vacations kick in, holidays, sick time, and all of those other things that come into play, you need to make sure you have a budget set aside for additional overtime and for part-time staff. And I'm not seeing that budget anywhere. And that could have just been because this was just an upfront presentation and not necessarily a down to the dirt numbers, if that makes sense. But I'm a number and a data analytics guy, so I penny everything. I don't quarter it either. So my budgets tend to be a little bit higher, just in case, because I'd rather not spend the money, but have the money there if needed. And that's come into huge handy this year with COVID-19. Like one of the examples, our supply cost has actually increased by over 30% this year because of COVID-19, because gloves, anything to do with airway supplies, all that stuff, that cost increase has increased by about 30% since COVID-19. And so that's something that you have to take into consideration as well, is those potential changes in the industry. Medication costs, pharmaceutical costs, all that stuff changes and varies on a month-to-month basis. Realistically, so if you're the easiest way to figure out the budget, if your rough cost estimate is about $400,000 per ambulance, you should probably add about 50 to 60,000 in there. So if you're going to staff one truck 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 2 full-time employees, right, to staff that one truck. You should actually budget for 3 full-time employees. And the reason I say that is because that budgeting for 3 full-time employees, even though you're not going to be spending the money on the benefits, that covers your overtime and your part-time staff to backfill if one of those people is off for whatever amount of holidays they have, whatever amount of, and I don't know your county policies, but like in our county, if you have a holiday, you have the option to either take that holiday off or get paid for it. So I don't know what your county policy is on that. I don't know what your vacation policies is for your county as far as what their vacations are. So you need to take that into consideration when you're filling out that budget. So if realistically you're saying it's about 400,000, you should probably budget for about 500,000 per ambulance to be safe. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Okay. All righty. Clint, where are we now? What we need to look at?
Well, we have presented all the numbers that we have. Now, these are soft numbers. So I guess y'all need to figure out what direction you want to go, and that'll tell us what we have to do. If you want to explore further, then we can get more concrete numbers. We can loop in the purchasing, loop in the treasurer's department to get some real salary numbers. I think the working group has put together a great asset list with Mike and proposed budget number. You can figure out your questions, I suppose. But that's all we have for today, or to present.
Based on this, I still like option 1 better.
Sure.
That's where we want to get to.
I'm kind of in between 1 and 2. You know, but
Hey, Judge, I can run some quick. What was y'all's call volume in 2019 for Liberty County? You know what the total call volume was for the year?
Yeah, it was, the total call volume was somewhere around 4250, somewhere in there.
Did you hear that, Ron?
About 42,000. That was your call numbers, and did that include because I don't have it all in front of me. When did Allegiance take over Dayton?
4,250 was the county call volume in 2019.
Okay.
Our average had dropped down to about billable calls for about 280. Now, actual cost was about 325 a month.
And the call volume for 2020 did go down because it's
Yeah, we shut down
Dayton and Cleveland.
for our call volume.
So was that including Dayton or not?
No,
No. Okay. So realistically, if your call volume is about 4250, you can anticipate and this is just rough numbers without having all the data in front of me, Judge. So I'm gonna apologize. I can work with Clint and them on that a little on the back end later if this is something y'all want to explore further. But your utilization man hours would be about 1.2 if you had 5 trucks. 1.2 is a little bit less than the national average of what you're looking for. And what that takes in consideration is the amount of time that they're actually working versus the amount of time that they have downtime. And with your transport times, with your from the dispatch to back in service and in county time, you can figure is about 2 hours per call, depending on where they're at in the county and where they're transporting to. So that gives you an average of about three calls per 24-hour shift for 5 trucks, which is going to give you an average of about 10 to 12 hours of working time for each individual truck within the county. So for a peak hour truck or 5 full-time trucks is a good starting point for you based on the utilization man hours and where y'all need to start at. Based on the 2019 call numbers. Don't take into consideration 2020 call numbers because COVID-19 has that completely, that's not even realistic on focusing on. So that's just based on your 2019 numbers. So 5 trucks gives you a good starting point, keeps your guys to where they're not working 18, 20 hours in a 24-hour shift. Gives them downtime for rest and safety purposes, but still gives you enough trucks in the county to cover. And then with your shift supervisor / captain, whatever y'all label them as, and your admin staff in the office, you still have access to a 6th truck if ever needed during the day.
Good.
And realistically, I would license 7 ambulances. That way you have access to 2 additional ambulances for special events. If you're covering, county rodeos, whatever the county special events are, you have another ambulance that's licensed to work those special events. So you're not taking an on the street ambulance out of service.
You get started in rodeo football game.
Well, we run a lot of structure fires in this county as well, and we always ask for our med unit back in the event. So that does help out and take up some slack to keep the 911 trucks going.
And we talked about that as well, just kind of down the weeds on every structure. I come from a fire-based service as well as Chris. I'm still actually a certified fireman. So every structure fire will have an ambulance and a supervisor going to it. If we get to a system status level, we have to move the ambulance to a 911 call. The captain will stay on scene with the fire personnel, and he can do everything but training. Did you want to get them up to speed on billing, Mr. Roger and Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, let's just touch on some.
I think once we're in level, all the way down to some weeds on billing. I'm not going to know anything about that billing. All right, so.
Okay. Well, the main reason too is, Chris, and you're people watching this on YouTube right now, sure. They'll have a clue about the MS business. What is it? Yeah, okay. I mean, I walked into, I didn't know about flying helicopters, but I did kind of run an ambulance service until I started getting the bike and learning a little bit. But there's folks that are watching that don't have any clue about why it costs us. And, why are we doing this right? Well, if you think we try to do this.
So with, on the sheet, we did a 5% what we expect our yearly to be. So based on Mike's revenue at about $100,000 per month for actual billable revenue, we did 35% of that. So that number became $420,000 roughly for the year. And we did that just so that we could account for any sort of like a pandemic, such as COVID-19 or any sort of issue where worst case scenario, we're either running less call volume or for some reason CMS is not, or Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services is not reimbursing at the same rate, or, we just had a change in office as the president. A lot of times things change with that as well when it comes to Medicare and, government reimbursement. But we shot really low on that because we wanted to show that we could still be, relatively sustainable at a 35% billable revenue. We firmly believe we can get 100% the same that Mike was getting, as well as the doctor. So with starting better, we could get more, up to 20% more, and that yearly value of 1.4 million could go up even higher. And we were talking about with COVID-19, we can look at these lessons learned going through that and through Mike's experiences, and what strategies would we employ to not have to, kind of succumb to some of those pitfalls in the future, how we can navigate through the next pandemic or whatever situation happens on top. have any questions on the billing aspect of it and why that number is what it was?
Tell them about how your paperwork and charting affects that number.
So everything we submit to a billing company that then bills Medicare or Medicaid or private insurance like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Aetna, how we chart these EMS charts is really what dictates how much we get reimbursed. The level of the provider, if we have a paramedic that gets on a truck and then his partner happens to be a critical care paramedic, that's a next level billing level, so we can get reimbursed more because there's a higher level provider on that truck. We can bill for all sorts of things that typically a lot of ambulance services and departments miss, and gets kind of money left on the table, so to speak. There's ways that, and Dr. Kukali is the one who kind of can speak to this more, but basically everything you chart down to every minor detail in your disposition dictates how much you get reimbursed. And unfortunately, a lot of services leave money on the table, and we could gather and garnish more of that money for reimbursement than we typically were in the past. And those guidelines change. Unfortunately, every year, Medicare will come out with a new way to chart. Now you have to do it this way. And if you're not up to date on those things, you'll still chart the old way and you'll miss out on a lot of money or flat get not reimbursed at all. So staying on top of the new CMS guidelines for charting and documentation is where we're going to make sure we're maximizing our return and on that revenue.
Are we having to come up with an outside firm for our billing, or are we going to be doing that in-house? As far as our collections, do we hire a firm for it? I mean, what is all?
So typically you use an outside firm. Mike, I believe the firm that you guys were using, this last firm, was it 30% that you pay them a percentage of what you make.
Correct.
And
6%.
Oh, 6%.
6% of what they can collect.
Right.
They were at 8, but they brought it
The county's current collections department, our attorneys, Linebarger, they also do collections for these type of services.
I have contacted them. They have agreed to per the charge extra, of course, but they are willing to do that. I was talking to Barry. For a lot of people that don't know, on our video chat, the county would have an advantage over a 501c3 and billing.
Absolutely.
They have an advantage over the whole process.
Licenses and stuff. Yeah, I was saying it's going to take a long time to license. I mean, are we going to be able to do that?
No, it's not going to take very long. Really, about 30 days.
Yeah.
We have a timeline for
State licenses, and then you can't get your Medicare billing, insurance billing, all that set up. Yeah, but you can do it.
So on our timeline, say we started this process February 1st. Say we started this process February 1st, we allotted 30 to 60 days because the rough estimate is about 45 days for a Texas Department of State Health Services licensing procedure. And that timeline could be quicker because we are basically doing a change of a change of name on the already licensed vehicles from Liberty County EMS versus a brand new startup, which would take longer. After we get a TDH license, then we can move on to our Medicare and Medicaid license. We can move on to our DEA license. Some of the DEA license, I believe also we may be able to do a change of ownership because the safe and all the narcotics are still kept in the same spot. And that's the big thing the DEA is worried about is you have to have a physical address before you can submit your application. So that's what bogs things down when you're doing a startup is finding a station and getting supplies, and then you have to submit that to the DEA. So a lot of this work has already been done, and it's just changing the name. So the timeline can be sped up before, in regards to licensing. Also with our new medical director, we'll have to keep his name on our protocols, develop new medical protocols, because when we submit our licensing application to the state, it has to have all of your charts as well as your medical protocols attached to it with your medical director signed off on it. And once we have all that done, submit that off. But we have that timeline of 30 to 60 days. So by the end of March, we can have that stuff pretty much solidified Then we can move on to April. We would do kind of a fleet assessment and inventory of our equipment, determine the operational status and everything we have. We talked about remounts, what's going to be usable, and work on any repairs if necessary. In May, we would establish some new FRO agreements, first responder organizations. This is going to be a new department. So with Dr. Kunkali already being over a lot of the FRO, first responder organization agreements, we will just establish new first responder organization agreements with all of our county fire departments and get that all on paper. Develop our station locations, figure out where exactly we're going to house these trucks, if that's going to be fire stations that are already up, if that's going to be figuring out a new facility, and then develop new SOPs in conjunction with our county officials. We have county SOPs, obviously, as county employees that we would follow. We would need some specific SOPs for that relate to EMS code of conduct and protocol that we would need to establish in conjunction with the county. And in June, we start to develop all the material for our training academy, curriculum standards, go ahead and meet with our neighboring counties, EMS and fire departments. We have to develop new mutual aid agreements. These are all going to be different. There's new faces, new departments. So we need to meet and greet and kind of mend a lot of these relationships with all the mutual aid guys to the west in Montgomery County, to the north in Polk and down in Chambers, as well as in July, we've got our post job openings. That would be our timeline for posting job openings so we can start to get applications in. We need to set up our EHR software implementation and get our billing already set up, ready to go in July. So we have, because that could take a long time. You have to build the system. And they do a great onboarding process at ESO. They'll come down, they'll see if we can help build this tailored just to your specific county EMS needs. And then in August and September, we could begin interviewing for all these positions, start to make conditional job offers by mid-September. And then in October, we hire on, that's in, new budget begins. We hire on the staff, begin our training academy, and that pipeline for all new personnel. We get uniforms and PPE gear. We have an EVOC, which is an emergency vehicle operations course, district familiarization, all of our clinical competency skills and evaluations, and go ahead and get our supplies and stock our stations to where by January 2022, day one, we begin full EMS operations in Liberty County. And the kind of training academy and pipeline starting in October, having that set out for 60 to even 90 days is going to replace what the new employees don't have, which is luxury of writing out with an FTO or a field training officer, because there is no one here yet. So we will have to do an intensive training program with them, just do regular work hours to get them all, developed. But oh, sorry. Get them all trained up, get them all ready to where, they're not going to have that kind of mentoring process, but me and Jared will be at the helm of that, training these guys hard, along with Dr. Kunkali, who wants to be side by side with everyone through the training process, which having a medical director who wants to be that involved is not only rare, but it's invaluable.
I believe that's been seen a lot here. Like I said earlier, he wants to come out and actually be involved. You might see us out on call at first approach, you're see our medical director, get everything, get a patient here. She's such a good asset.
I did not see any in the proposal of training expenses, which Chambers County did include. I know we're going to have a lot of, if we decide to go this way, we're going to have a lot of billable things that are not in here. So,
so training expenses, a lot of training equipment as far as mannequins and stuff, that would be in the.
We already have that in assets.
We already have that in assets. As far as
We already have SIG mannequins, or considered one that has SIG mannequins, training equipment, fire supplies. We would just bring all that over and save us a lot of money on starting out the training and supply together.
And as far as payroll and man hours, that would be just like they're all in the truck. It would just be regular man hours, but we would be spent in the classroom training and doing field exercises as well until that startup date of January 1st, being ready to go.
and hopefully if we decide to do this, we can get some of our old and trusted hands back.
Yes, that's the plan. Recruit from within. Okay. And also on the EVOC, the emergency vehicle course, I think it actually might be required, but I know, so for county insurance, if we have that certification for our employees, it actually, I think, lowers y'all's insurance rate, the premiums, something like that. So it's a good thing to have as well.
While we're on the subject of insurance, what is this going to do to our insurance as far as the liability? I would think that would accommodate an ambulance service.
We can't answer that. The working group cannot answer that.
Mike, you got any idea?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, y'all have a pretty big policy. adding on to it, what they don't.
Hey, Judge, this is Ron. So what, do y'all use Texas Association of Counties like we do in Chambers County?
No,
Okay. That's the only way I'd be able to answer that question. So, I mean, I could tell you, it depends on the insurance you want to go with. I can tell you as for EMS and fire agencies, there's specific carriers that only deal with EMS and fire, which would have to something to be budgeted. A lot of the volunteer fire and other EMS organizations use veteran VFIS, which is volunteer fire insurance services. And they specialize in fire EMS, and that will actually, it would be an additional expense into the EMS budget, but that would prevent it from adding additional liability to your current county insurance and current county asset list as well. So there's other options you have there as far as insurance, as far as liability is concerned. And depending on which insurance you go with, depends on what additional coverage you get. Like, for example, with VFIS, if you have VFIS, anybody that those guys say, hey, Judge, get up front and drive me to the hospital, you're now covered under VFIS insurance to drive that apparatus without having to go through background checks and driver's license checks and everything else. So it just depends on which insurance you go with and how it's going to adjust your liability, to be honest with you.
Most of the departments use VFIS or Jacob Weber. So yeah, he's true in saying, we're going to have our own special type of insurance for this EMS system.
Well, we pay about $24,000 every 3 months.
Fire department costs us about 18,000 to get a year right now.
Okay, so I'm 24 times.
so summarize. We're just saying, hey, we like this, everything's perfect. Moon lines up, Saturday, Jupiter, everybody's looking great. You're saying you push the button potentially January 1st.
That's very reasonable. That's a realistic one.
So we still have to have coverage, some carrier, the contract carrier for at least another 11 months at least. All right.
And then in the middle of a budget, we're gonna have to hire at least in the startup plan 2 people at this point, on top of the $500,000 for buying the equipment. I'm all for it. We can get everything lined up.
Get the checkbook looking right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Leon, you got any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Greg,
Yeah.
got any questions?
And no, I don't have any right now, but after I have a chance to look over this a little more closer, I probably have a couple more questions, but we'll discuss that later.
Okay. Y'all want Clint and the group to further investigate the cost of this? We've got to get a hard number down. Or, I mean, we're not voting on anything, just an opinion.
To continue on a hard number for the county?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That needs to take place, Jay.
I know it does.
Yes.
We gotta get down to the penny on this.
All right. That was next to, because it's going to take a lot more digging, but we have a pretty good base number to stare at. So, yeah, let's, drive on with a little bit more.
Okay, option one, I'm assuming.
I still like option one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Option one, any training, I mean, the problem is with the figures that we're looking at now, I don't want to come in here and say, yeah, we're going to do this. Like, oh, well, we forgot this, this money here, and I want something more where I know this is going to go up or down, but I don't want it to go extremely up. So,
Would you like us to build a package with option one and then option four, like you talked about,
Yeah.
just to look at it?
yeah, because I mean, we're going to have the extra ambulances to do whatever we want, and like you said, we need to license 7 if we're going to run 5 or 6.
Put those figures
But, yeah, running, I mean, if we're really looking at running 5 ambulances, running that, really 6 is fine. We can always throw in, where it's going to be licensed, and we can always throw it in the year after or during the new budget session.
I know that, how long is it gonna take?
To get those hard numbers. You're talking about meeting with, purchasing or something.
We'll have to get them to put it in now.
So it's at their timeline. We can meet whenever, they're ready. So
The assets, that one is only.
Gotcha.
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Assets is my holdup. I get you.
But I mean, we came by that, so we're not going to do this.
Correct.
So I mean, it's,
Okay, could we sell it? Correct.
All righty then. Any more questions, anybody? Any more questions, anybody? I'm good. Let's just, we'll call it. Just the one, we thought, say, thank y'all for participating in the workshop. Back, do it again.